some of the flora in this yard. Some goldenrod getting ready to really kick it into gear here. It's not quite there. August 20th, southeast Michigan. I'm sure some areas are in different stages and blooms. I don't often come too far back here where the deer like to hang out. A lot of deer beds. But check out all the loose strife. Too bad it's not sunny. This weather kind of sucks. James Lee with James Lee's Bees out at the airport yard, checking on some data. Going to take a cruise through here and match up numbers on colonies to verify consistency from last year's data. When it gets kind of crazy in the spring with splits and swarming and getting ready for honey production, sometimes it's really difficult to ensure that all of the numbers and the information is being translated into the paper or the notebook or the tape or whatever method I'm using for recording. So I actually had to glove up and put on the bee suit, even though I'm not opening any colonies, because the mosquitoes are assaulting me. All right, we got the handy dandy pen, handy dandy notebook. Actually, it'd be interesting to see when the last time was I actually wrote anything down in this book. It looks like I gave up probably around July 14th or so. That's all right, it's not too bad. I thought it might have been worse. But I am going to take a look at the colonies here and verify numbers on the fronts of the colonies now that I know. Airplane. Which one is which? All the honey supers are off. That's a big relief. This colony has a massive amount of bees and brood in it still, versus some of the neighbors did not have as much brood. They still looked really good, but this colony here with the green boxes on the top just slammed with brood. I am going to use that to donate, use the brood from that colony to donate to some of these smaller colonies. All right, that's enough jib-jabbing and walking around looking at the boxes. So this colony, I don't have a number on the front, but I know exactly who that is. And that is a daughter of a F1 from Stevens Bee Co. It was requeened again earlier in the year on its own because I thought that I removed all the cells from that box, and apparently I was wrong. The alternative is that they requeen themselves via stray queen or a virgin in the yard that found herself a home in there despite my efforts. So I don't know, but I know that colony there needs a number, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go get a number and put one on. So traditionally I use little push-in pins or hotel key tags, which I'll show you some of those that help me keep each colony numbered throughout the course of the season. And then I removed the push pin when I move the queen, and then the pin goes with her wherever she goes. But I don't know if you'll be able to see this. What kind of stinks is this particular year I used these white ones. It was off of Amazon. I wouldn't recommend them, so I'm not gonna link it. But the sun was really, really hard on these. And what ends up happening is that your number becomes nothing. Okay? Here's another one. Basically becomes a blank push pin. Right? So with it being later in the season, I still have some of these, so I'm still going to use them, and I'm going to hope for the best. On some of these colonies, what I have is blank pins, but because I recorded data successfully from left to right, facing the colonies, I should be able to go back in my paper record and determine what the number of that colony was. It's not 100%, and it can create some errors in data recording and reporting, but it's the best that I got to work with right now. So I'm going to replace this colony here with number 60. I just take the pin, push it down in the front of the colony, yeah, like I said, I just use this is actually an old vitamin or pill box that I had laying around. So I'm going to take the notebook here and the date, and then the location of the apiary, and then the number of the colony. So we said this is number 60, and because sometimes I have multiple colors, I'll put the color of the marker. So W60, and this is going to be an SBC from Stevens Bee Co. And the daughter he sent me was an F1. So the queen that's in there is possibly an F2. And then I'm going to record any mite wash data that I put on the tape and in the box, top of the box. And we'll see that, because it's easier when you're going through things, that I was recording some of the data here and some of the data here. So I'm going to translate that real quick. All right, now that I recorded that data, you can see here, I just took whatever was on the lid and on the tape, and I entered July 19th, the queen was marked. The first mite wash I did was a 3. The second mite wash of the same sample, so I emptied out the solution, and I re-washed the same sample of bees to make sure that I got all the mites out of that sample, was 0. All right, so no more mites would show up in the wash. August 11th, I came back, I did another evaluation. The mite count went up by 3, so there were 6 mites in the wash, and the second wash of that same sample was also 0. Not really a concerning it's not really a concerning mite situation. And this colony was not treated last year. That queen that was in there previously was inserted during mite group queen orders from the Sustainable Beekeepers Guild that we did for Michigan beekeepers, and she overwintered successfully, looked really good, but wound up requeening. So still pretty low on the mite threshold there. I'm going to do the next colony, and then I'm going to go on down the whole entire row here. Okay, so yeah, I got everything written down. I'll have to check the clock to see how long that took, but I think I've got everything squared away. Like I said, the issue with these white tags seems to be that the information gets rubbed off. You can see where I've figured out what the number on this was, and I rewrote it on there for now. Same with this one. And I also recorded the data that's on colonies that have been shifted and moved around. Like this one still has a red tag from last year, but that's not a red queen from last year. So making sure that I got all my notes, things that I've written on the tape on the sides, added to the number so I can have a category and keep track of it. Anyway, this airport yard has never been a yard that I focused a lot on the breeding on, but I have been monitoring it and been determining whether or not there's some sort of a population-wide effect of genetics because all of my apiaries are within 2 miles as the crow flies from each other. So there should be some impact. There should be some effect, right? There should be some sort of mating benefit as a result of that saturation of colonies. In this yard right now, there's about 20 colonies, but a lot of them are colonies that had received some form of a treatment last year because they failed my threshold of 5% for mite washes, or they failed the Harbo. And for me, that is defined by a score of 2 or lower on the Harbo scale. And then those colonies are removed from the breeding program. If they scored a 4, the queen mother was removed from the apiary and taken over to a mating yard. And that comes to the idea of the saturation model, not having tons of colonies in order to create some sort of mating paradigm. Not to say that that doesn't work, because it does. But on a smaller scale, for somebody with limited access to land or resources, you can condense all of your selected preferential good rock star stock, things that you want to breed from, traits you want to breed from, and condense them into a singular apiary. And then if you keep moving all of the good stock into that apiary, you bring your queens that are candidates for mating into that apiary. You're concentrating those genetics, and you're able to repeat and replicate that and move those genetics into the other outyards or the other apiaries and continue to see a progressive or gradual improvement. Now, all the mite counts in this yard are low this year, with a couple of exceptions, and they're all below treatment threshold. Does that mean that they are resistant? Not necessarily. It could mean that they're mating with local stock from my other yards in general, maybe. I have not seen that as a true effect over the last several years. The general impact of the mating paradigm that I use is usually in the yard where the breeders are. So what do we do in this instance? Well, these colonies are below my threshold, so I won't treat them. I will continue to monitor their mite loads, and we'll take that information into the spring and then see what happens when they get back under load in May or June and they're brooding up, and how they handle those particular mite populations. As to how to continue to saturate, all of the colonies that succeed in being removed from the program or removed from the yard, because obviously they're the stock that you want, they score high on the scale, or they keep their mite counts down via mite washing, those colonies get moved into those breeding yards and produce next year's drones. And they continue to remain untreated with no chemical interventions in order to be monitored and retained in the program. So I don't know, there's a bit of rambling about some of the stuff that I do, how I kind of view my paradigm or my model, if you will. I'm done recording the data in this yard, and I'm going to peace out, yo.